Most people don't repeat the same mistakes because they are foolish, careless, or unwilling to learn. They repeat them because knowing better is not the same thing as being wired to act differently. This gap between insight and behavior is one of the most frustrating parts of being human. You can recognize a pattern, predict its outcome, promise yourself you won't repeat it, and still find yourself doing exactly the same thing again. If you've ever asked yourself why you keep ending up in the same situations, whether that involves relationships, money, work stress, procrastination, or self-sabotage, the answer lies less in motivation and more in how the brain is designed to operate. Much of human behavior is not driven by conscious thought, but by automatic systems built to conserve energy and reduce discomfort. The thinking part of the brain understands logic, consequences, and long-term goals. The habit-driven part is concerned with familiarity, emotional safety, and efficiency. When life is calm, the thinking brain has more influence. When stress, fatigue, or emotion rises, the habit system takes over. This is why people often repeat mistakes during moments when they are overwhelmed, lonely, anxious, or exhausted. The brain defaults to what it knows, even if what it knows is unhelpful. Another reason people repeat mistakes is that many of these behaviors provide short-term emotional relief. Avoidance reduces anxiety in the moment. Distraction numbs discomfort. Familiar patterns, even unhealthy ones, feel safer than uncertainty. In these moments, the brain is not weighing long-term outcomes. It is asking a much simpler question: what will help me feel better right now? That question often wins, especially under pressure. This does not reflect weakness or lack of discipline. It reflects a nervous system doing what it evolved to do. Identity also plays a powerful role. People often behave in ways that match how they see themselves. If someone carries an internal story that they are bad with money, unlucky in love, inconsistent, or prone to failure, their behavior will often align with that narrative. Acting outside that identity can feel uncomfortable, even when the change is positive. This is why people sometimes sabotage progress just as things start to improve. The improvement clashes with their self-image, and the brain seeks to restore what feels familiar. Many people assume that awareness alone should fix this problem. They analyze their behavior, understand their triggers, and can explain exactly why they do what they do. Yet nothing changes. Awareness is valuable, but it does not interrupt behavior at the moment it occurs. Without interruption, the brain simply runs the same program again. Insight explains the pattern, but interruption is what weakens it. Turning things around begins with shifting focus away from self-blame and towards pattern recognition. Instead of asking why you made the mistake again, it is far more useful to notice when it tends to happen. Patterns are tied to emotional states, environments, timing, and stress levels. When those conditions repeat, the behavior repeats. Once you recognize the conditions, you gain the ability to intervene earlier, before the behavior takes hold. Real change also becomes easier when you stop relying on willpower and start designing your environment to support better choices. Willpower is fragile, especially when you are tired or overwhelmed. Small changes that introduce friction into old habits or make healthier alternatives easier are far more effective than relying on self-control alone. The brain responds to what is easy, available, and familiar. It is also important to recognize that repeated mistakes serve a function. They meet an emotional need, whether that need is comfort, relief, control, distraction, or reassurance. If you try to remove the behavior without addressing the need it fulfills, the brain will simply replace it with another version of the same pattern. Change becomes sustainable when the underlying need is met in a less costly way. Identity shifts do not happen through positive thinking alone. They change through evidence. Each small moment where you pause, choose differently, or recover more quickly from a slip provides the brain with proof that the old story is no longer fully accurate. Over time, behavior changes not because you force it, but because it no longer conflicts with how you see yourself. Mistakes will still happen. Repetition does not disappear overnight. The key difference is how you respond. When a slip becomes a story about who you are, the pattern strengthens. When it becomes information about what needs adjusting, the pattern weakens. Progress is not the absence of mistakes, but shorter loops, earlier awareness, and quicker recovery. People repeat the same mistakes not because they lack intelligence or desire to change, but because their brains prioritize familiarity, emotional relief, and efficiency. When you work with these realities rather than against them, change becomes far more achievable. You do not need harsher self-criticism or endless analysis. You need kinder awareness, better designed systems, and small interruptions that add up over time. That is how old patterns lose their grip, and that is how real change begins.